March 15th, 2019. Vincent Chen had built his Hollywood empire on a lie that killed his best friend 50 years ago. The letter arrived on Oscar morning, written in Master Lu's unmistakable calligraphy, containing a single photograph and 7 words that made Vincent's blood freeze. Tommy didn't fall. You know the truth. Tommy Zhao, his training partner, his rival, the boy who should have been the legend instead of Vincent. Dead at 17 in what everyone called a tragic accident during their final test at the Shaolin Temple, Vincent dropped the letter. His hands shook as he stared at the photograph, a shot of him and Tommy laughing together the day before Tommy died. On the back, coordinates to a place Vincent had tried to forget for half a century. Someone knew what really happened on that temple roof. Someone had been waiting 50 years to collect. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Vincent's knees buckled. The Oscar statue on his mantle, a golden reminder of 40 years of carefully constructed success, seemed to mock him as he collapsed into his leather chair. The morning sun streaming through his Beverly Hills mansion felt cold against his skin. The photograph trembled in his weathered hands. Tommy's face, frozen in eternal youth, grinned back at him with the cocky confidence that had made him Vincent's fiercest competitor. They'd been inseparable once, 2 Hong Kong street kids who'd clawed their way into Master Lu's exclusive training academy, pushing each other to impossible heights on the temple's ancient stone platforms. Vincent's phone buzzed. A text from his assistant: "Car arrives in 30. Red carpet starts at 4. You ready to make history tonight?" History. Vincent almost laughed at the bitter irony. Tonight, the Academy would honor him with a Lifetime Achievement Award for revolutionizing action choreography and bringing authentic martial arts to Western cinema. 40 years of death-defying sequences, of making Hollywood stars look like warriors, of building a reputation as the most sought-after stunt coordinator in the industry. All of it built on Tommy's grave. The coordinates on the photo's back burned into his vision: 22.3964 degree N, 114.1095 degree E. He didn't need to look them up. Those numbers were seared into his memory like a brand, the exact location on the temple's rooftop where Tommy had fallen, where Vincent had watched him die, where Vincent had made the choice that launched his career and damned his soul. He stood on unsteady legs and walked to his wall of photographs. Decades of memories with a list actors, directors, and industry legends. Jackie Chan's arm around his shoulder at a premiere. Jet Li bowing respectfully after their first collaboration. Tom Cruise hanging from a helicopter, trust gleaming in his eyes as Vincent directed from below. Every image a testament to the lie he'd been living. His daughter Sarah's voice echoed from the hallway. "Dad? The stylist is here early. She says you specifically requested—" Sarah stopped mid-sentence as she entered the room, her trained eye immediately catching his distress. At 28, she'd inherited not just his martial arts prowess, but his ability to read danger in someone's posture. "What's wrong?" She moved with fluid grace, her concern cutting through his haze. Sarah had followed his path into the industry, working her way up from stunt double to second-unit director on major productions. She was everything he'd hoped for in a daughter: talented, determined, honorable, everything he'd pretended to be. Vincent quickly folded the letter, but Sarah's reflexes were too sharp. Her eyes caught the edge of the photograph before he could hide it completely. "Who's that boy? He looks like—" Her face went pale. "Dad, that's you, isn't it? You look so young." "It's nothing." The words came out harsher than he intended, just old memories surfacing before tonight's ceremony. But Sarah had inherited more than his physical abilities. She'd also inherited his instinct for detecting lies. Her dark eyes narrowed as she studied his face with the same intensity she brought to analyzing stunt sequences for safety hazards. "This is about Tommy, isn't it?" she said quietly. "The friend you told me about. The one who died in the accident." Vincent's chest tightened. He'd mentioned Tommy only once, years ago, when Sarah had pressed him about his early training. He'd painted Tommy as a cautionary tale about the dangers of pushing too hard, taking too many risks. Another lie wrapped in a kernel of truth. "Sarah, please. You never talk about Hong Kong. Never. I've been begging you to take me there since I was 12, to see where you trained, to meet your old master. But you always change the subject." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to the whisper she used when directing actors through dangerous sequences. "Someone's threatening you, aren't they?" The doorbell chimed, Vincent's stylist, arriving to prepare him for his moment of triumph. The irony wasn't lost on him, getting dressed up to receive accolades for a career built on murder. "I have to get ready." He moved toward the door, but Sarah caught his arm. Her grip was firm, the strength of a woman who doubled for Hollywood's toughest action heroines. "Dad, whatever this is, we face it together. That's what you taught me. That's what partners do. Partners." The word hit him like a physical blow. That's what he and Tommy had been. Partners, brothers. Until the moment Vincent chose his own survival over loyalty. Vincent looked into his daughter's eyes and saw Tommy's unwavering trust reflected back at him. The same blind faith Tommy had placed in him right up until the end. The same faith Sarah placed in him now, not knowing she was standing next to a killer. Tonight, Hollywood would celebrate Vincent Chen, the legendary choreographer who'd brought authenticity to action cinema. But someone out there knew the truth about that authenticity, that it was bought with blood on a temple rooftop 50 years ago, and they were coming to collect the debt. If this story is drawing you in and you want to see how Vincent's dark secret unfolds, make sure you're following along, because tomorrow's revelation will change everything you think you know about what really happened on that rooftop in Hong Kong. The stylist's cheerful voice carried from the foyer, an unwelcome intrusion into the suffocating weight of the moment. Vincent felt Sarah's grip on his arm loosen slightly, but her eyes remained locked on his face, searching for truth in the lines that 40 years of guilt had etched there. "Mr. Chen, I brought 3 tux options like you requested." The voice grew closer. "And I have the special cufflinks from Cartier for tonight's ceremony." Vincent gently extracted himself from Sarah's grasp, his movements careful and deliberate, the same precision that had kept him alive through countless dangerous shoots. "We'll continue this conversation later." "No, we won't." Sarah's voice carried the quiet steel he recognized from his own nature. "You'll deflect, change the subject, find some excuse to avoid it, like you always do." She glanced toward the sound of approaching footsteps, then back to him. "But tonight, after all the cameras and congratulations, we're going to talk about what's really in that letter." The stylist appeared in the doorway, a petite woman with silver hair and the harried efficiency of someone who dressed half of Hollywood. "Oh, Sarah, darling, I didn't know you'd be here. Are you attending tonight? Because I brought that midnight blue number that would be absolutely stunning." "I'll leave you to get ready." Sarah moved toward the door, but paused at the threshold. "Dad, whatever you're protecting me from, it's too late. I'm already involved." Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward the letter still clutched in his hand. "The moment someone decided to contact you, they made it about both of us." She disappeared down the hallway, leaving Vincent alone with the stylist and the weight of truth hanging in the air like incense. He could hear Sarah's footsteps on the marble floor, confident, purposeful, just like Tommy's had been as they'd climbed toward their final training session all those years ago. "Sir, should I set up in the master bedroom as usual?" The stylist was studying him with professional concern. "You look a bit pale. Perhaps some concealer for the cameras tonight?" Vincent nodded absently, his mind still reeling from Sarah's words. She was right, of course. By sending the letter to his home address, an address that wasn't listed in any public records, whoever was behind this already knew about his daughter, knew she lived here, knew she was his weakness. The thought sent ice through his veins. He followed the stylist upstairs, his hand trailing along the banister that Sarah had polished to perfection just yesterday. This house had been their sanctuary for 15 years, ever since her mother's death. Every room held memories of quiet Sunday mornings, of practicing forms together in the backyard, of Sarah bandaging his hands after particularly brutal filming days. The master bedroom felt different now, tainted by the knowledge that someone had been watching, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy everything he'd built. The stylist laid out 3 tuxedos on the bed with military precision, but Vincent's attention was drawn to the framed photograph on his nightstand, Sarah at her college graduation, beaming with pride as she held her film degree. "That's a beautiful shot," the stylist said, following his gaze. She has your eyes. And your stubborn streak, I'd imagine. Vincent managed a weak smile. She gets that from her mother. But as he said it, he knew it was another lie. Sarah's stubbornness was pure Chen, the same relentless determination that had driven him and Tommy to push beyond their limits, to attempt moves that other students wouldn't dare try. It was what made her exceptional at her job, but it was also what would make it impossible to protect her from what was coming. The letter crinkled in his jacket pocket as the stylist began her work, adjusting collar and cuffs with practiced efficiency. Through the bedroom's floor-to-ceiling windows, Beverly Hills sprawled below them, a kingdom built on dreams and deception, where Vincent had carved out his own corner of success through careful lies and strategic silence. "Mr. Chen?" The stylist's voice seemed to come from far away. "I asked if you prefer the platinum or gold cufflinks?" Vincent blinked, refocusing on her expectant face. In the mirror behind her, he caught a glimpse of himself, a 68-year-old man about to be celebrated for achievements built on his best friend's death. The face looking back at him was lined with fatigue and secrets, nothing like the young man in that photograph with Tommy. "Gold," he said quietly. "Gold is more honest." The stylist nodded and began fastening the cufflinks, chattering about the evening's schedule, about which photographers would be there, about how proud she was to be part of this historic night. But Vincent heard none of it. His mind was 50 years away, standing on a temple rooftop with his best friend, making the choice that would define the rest of his life. Somewhere in Hong Kong, someone was waiting for him to make another choice. And this time, Sarah's life might depend on it. Vincent's phone rang. The sound cut through the stylist's chatter like a blade, its sharp trill echoing off the bedroom walls with an urgency that made his blood freeze. The ringtone was unfamiliar, not the usual buzz of his iPhone, but the old-fashioned bell sound he'd programmed for unknown international numbers, a sound he hadn't heard in months. "Excuse me," he said to the stylist, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The woman nodded and stepped back, busying herself with arranging his shoes while Vincent fumbled for the device. The number on the screen made his knees weak, plus 852, Hong Kong. Vincent's thumb hovered over the decline button, but something in the letter's words echoed back to him. "Master Lu's final wish demands you return to Hong Kong to face the victim's family." If he ignored this call, would they simply escalate? Would they contact Sarah directly? He answered on the 5th ring. Vincent Chen. His own voice sounded foreign to him, as if it belonged to someone else. Silence stretched across the international connection, filled only with the faint static of ocean cables and satellite delays. Then, cutting through the white noise, came a sound that stopped Vincent's heart. Humming. A melody he hadn't heard in 50 years, but one that was burned into his memory with surgical precision. The traditional Cantonese tune Master Lu used to hum during their early morning training sessions, when mist still clung to the temple stones and Hong Kong stretched below them like a sleeping dragon. Siu Feng Ga Yuet Ming. The voice was elderly, weathered, speaking the words to the melody in perfect Cantonese. Little phoenix under bright moon. A woman's voice, but one aged by decades of grief. "You remember this song, don't you, Vincent?" Lu Sifu used to sing it when he was pleased with a student's progress. Vincent's hand tightened on the phone. The stylist glanced up from his shoes with polite concern, but he waved her back to her work, his mind racing through possibilities. Who was this? How did they know about Master Lu's habits, his private moments with his students? "I don't know what you want," Vincent said quietly, switching to Cantonese himself. The language felt rusty on his tongue after years of Hollywood English. A soft laugh drifted across the connection. "I want what I've wanted for 50 years, Vincent. I want my brother back." The words hit him like a physical blow. Brother, Tommy's sister. The little girl who used to wait outside the academy gates, watching through the bars as they practiced their forms. She'd been maybe 8 years old the last time he'd seen her, all fierce eyes and protective fury whenever the other students teased Tommy about his family's poverty. Mei Lin? The name escaped his lips before he could stop it. "You do remember." Her voice carried a satisfaction that chilled him. "Good. I was afraid 40 years in America might have washed away your memory along with your conscience." The stylist was pretending not to listen, but Vincent could see her shoulders tense with the kind of professional discretion that came from dressing Hollywood's elite. She'd heard confessions, breakdowns, and career-ending phone calls in bedrooms just like this one. But this was different. This was about murder. Mei Lin. What happened to Tommy was what? The question cut across his words like a whip. An accident? Training went wrong? Is that the story you've been telling yourself all these years while you built your empire on his bones? Vincent moved toward the windows, putting distance between himself and the stylist. Beverly Hills stretched out below him, but all he could see was a temple rooftop half a world away, slick with morning dew and his best friend's blood. "I received a letter," he said carefully, "from Master Lu. Master Lu has been dead for 10 years. Mei Lin's voice carried a cruel pleasure, but his final student, his last disciple before the cancer took him, she learned many interesting things about that night on the roof, about what really happened between you and my brother." The room seemed to tilt around Vincent. If Master Lu was dead, then who had written the letter? Who knew about the coordinates, about the photograph, about the choice he'd made that night? "You sent the letter." It wasn't a question. "I sent many things, Vincent. Letters, gifts, reminders of what you cost my family." Her voice grew harder, decades of rage crystallizing into each syllable. "But tonight is special. Tonight, while Hollywood celebrates your achievements, I want you to remember that everything you've built belongs to Tommy. Every award, every success, every moment of pride, it should have been his. What do you want from me?" "I want you to come home," she said simply. "I want you to kneel at my brother's grave and confess what you did. I want Sarah to know exactly what kind of man raised her." The mention of Sarah's name hit him like ice water. "Leave my daughter out of this." "Your daughter?" Mei Lin's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "The daughter who follows in your footsteps, who trusts you completely, who has no idea her father is a killer. She's not out of this, Vincent. She's the whole point." The line went dead. Vincent stared at the phone, his reflection ghost-like in its dark screen. Somewhere in Hong Kong, Tommy's sister was waiting for him to make a choice that would destroy everything he'd spent 50 years building. But this time, he wouldn't be the only one to fall. Vincent stood frozen by the window, the dead phone still pressed to his ear like a lifeline to nowhere. The Beverly Hills skyline blurred in front of him as his mind reeled from Mei Lin's words. "She's the whole point, Mr. Chen?" The stylist's voice seemed to come from underwater. Should I come back later?" He turned slowly, forcing his features into the mask of calm professionalism that had served him through decades of high-to-pressure film shoots. "No, we continue." But his hands shook as he set the phone down, and the stylist's trained eye caught every tremor. She'd dressed enough Hollywood legends to recognize the difference between opening night nerves and genuine terror. Vincent moved back toward the bed, his legs unsteady. The 3 tuxedos lay spread across the silk comforter like funeral shrouds, black fabric for a man attending his own wake. How many times had he stood in rooms like this, preparing for premieres and award ceremonies, never imagining that someone halfway around the world was counting down the days until his destruction. "The midnight blue brings out your eyes," the stylist offered gently, but Vincent barely heard her. His mind was calculating distances, timelines, possibilities. Hong Kong was 16 hours ahead. If Mei Lin was calling now, it was already tomorrow there, the future reaching back to drag him into his past. The house felt different around him, no longer a sanctuary but a trap. Every shadow could hide watching eyes. Every creak of settling wood could mask footsteps on the stairs. How long had Mei Lin been planning this? How much did she know about his routines, his security, his daughter's schedule? "Sarah," he whispered, the name escaping like a prayer. "Sir?" Vincent's head snapped up, realizing he'd spoken aloud. The stylist was watching him with the careful attention of someone who'd witnessed too many celebrity meltdowns. Her hands had stilled on the platinum cufflinks, waiting for him to either collapse or compose himself. "I need to make another call." He reached for his phone again, muscle memory dialing Sarah's number before his conscious mind could stop him. The phone rang once, twice. "Dad?" Sarah's voice was tight with concern. "What's wrong now? Where are you?" The question came out sharper than he intended, decades of protective instinct overriding social niceties. A pause. "I'm in the kitchen, getting coffee. Dad, you're scaring me. What happened after I left?" Vincent closed his eyes, relief flooding through him so intensely that his knees nearly buckled. She was still in the house, still safe, still unaware that someone in Hong Kong had just made her a target in a 50-year-old game of revenge. "I want you to stay close tonight," he said, trying to inject calm into his voice. "Don't leave the ceremony alone. Don't go anywhere without security." "Vincent Chen, you are officially freaking me out." Sarah's tone sharpened with the authority she used on film sets when dealing with reckless stunt performers. "Someone called you, didn't they? Someone from Hong Kong." The stylist had given up all pretense of not listening. She stood with the cufflinks clutched in her palm, eyes wide with the kind of fascination that came from witnessing real drama unfold, the kind that couldn't be scripted or choreographed. "Sarah, I need you to trust me," Vincent said quietly. "Can you do that?" Silence stretched across the connection. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that reminded him painfully of her mother, the same steel wrapped in silk, the same refusal to be protected from inconvenient truths. "I've trusted you my whole life, Dad. Even when you won't tell me about Hong Kong, even when you wake up screaming from nightmares you claim you don't remember, even when you look at me sometimes like you're seeing a ghost." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But trust goes both ways, and right now, you're asking me to trust you while you lie to my face." The line went dead. Vincent stared at the phone, feeling the last of his carefully constructed walls crumble around him. In the space of 10 minutes he'd lost control of everything, his past, his present, and now his future. Mei Lin had reached across an ocean to shatter his life with surgical precision, and Sarah was too smart, too trained in reading danger, to accept his fumbling attempts at protection. "Mr. Chen?" The stylist's voice was barely audible. "Perhaps we should postpone the fitting?" Vincent looked at himself in the full-length mirror, a 68-year-old man coming apart at the seams, while Hollywood prepared to celebrate his greatest triumphs. The irony wasn't lost on him. Tonight he would smile for cameras and accept accolades for bringing authenticity to action cinema, while the most authentic thing about him, his guilt, remained buried under 50 years of careful lies. But Mei Lin was done letting him hide. The game had begun, and Sarah was already on the board whether she knew it or not. Vincent's only choice now was whether to run toward the truth or wait for it to hunt him down. Either way, the boy on that temple rooftop had finally come home to collect his due. Vincent set the phone down with deliberate care, as if the device might shatter under the weight of what had just transpired. The stylist watched him with the practiced concern of someone who'd witnessed countless Hollywood breakdowns, but this felt different, less theatrical, more terminal. "Continue," he said quietly, though his voice sounded hollow even to himself. She approached cautiously, selecting the midnight blue tuxedo with the reverence of someone handling evidence. As she helped him into the jacket, Vincent caught sight of himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. The face was familiar, the same one that had graced magazine covers and behind-the-scenes documentaries, but something fundamental had shifted behind his eyes. The weight of the jacket settled on his shoulders like a shroud. 50 years of careful construction, and it had taken Mei Lin exactly 2 phone calls to reduce him to this trembling shell. He thought of all the mornings he'd watched Sarah practice her forms in their backyard, the same movements he and Tommy had perfected on that temple roof. Every kick, every stance had been a reminder of what he'd stolen, and he'd taught it all to his daughter with steady hands and patient instruction. "The cufflinks, sir?" The stylist's voice seemed to come from very far away. Vincent nodded absently, his mind racing through the implications of Mei Lin's words. She's the whole point. Not revenge against him. That would have been simple, clean, something he could have faced alone. But involving Sarah transformed this from punishment into psychological warfare of the cruelest kind. His phone buzzed with a text message. The stylist paused, reading the expression that crossed his face as he glanced at the screen. "Check your email. M." Vincent's hands shook as he opened his laptop, the stylist forgotten as dread coiled in his stomach like a living thing. One new message waited in his inbox, sent from an account he didn't recognize but signed with a name that made his blood freeze: Tommy Zhao. The subject line was a single word: brother. Vincent clicked it open with nerveless fingers, and the world tilted sideways. The email contained a single photograph, grainy, clearly taken with a long-range lens, but unmistakably recent. It showed Sarah leaving the studio lot yesterday after her meeting with the insurance investigators. She was walking alone toward her car, completely unaware that someone was documenting her every movement. But it was the timestamp that destroyed him. The photo had been taken at 3:47 p.m. Pacific Time, exactly 24 hours before the letter arrived. They'd been watching his daughter for days. Beneath the photograph was a single line of text: Master Lu always said that true strength comes from knowing when to fall. Are you ready to learn, Vincent? Jesus, he whispered, the profanity escaping before he could stop it. The stylist stepped back, alarmed by the gray pallor that had overtaken his features. Vincent's mind raced through the possibilities with the tactical precision that had made him Hollywood's most sought-after choreographer. This wasn't random revenge. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign designed to strip away everything that mattered to him. First his reputation, then his career, and finally his daughter's safety. Mei Lin had studied him across 5 decades, learning his weaknesses, mapping his pressure points with surgical precision. She knew exactly what would break him. Another text arrived, this one containing just an address in Kowloon and a time: tomorrow, 6 a.m. Come alone. Vincent stared at the screen, understanding that he'd just received his marching orders. Return to Hong Kong, face the truth, destroy himself publicly, or watch Sarah pay the price for his sins. Mr. Chen? The stylist's voice carried genuine concern now. Should I call someone? You look like you might. I need you to leave. The words came out harder than he intended, but Vincent was past caring about social niceties. Now, please. She nodded quickly, gathering her supplies with professional efficiency. Of course. I'll send someone for the tuxedo later. But Vincent was already moving, his mind shifting into the crisis mode that had served him through countless dangerous film shoots. He had perhaps 12 hours before Sarah realized something was catastrophically wrong. 12 hours to decide whether to run toward Hong Kong and certain destruction, or stay and watch his daughter become collateral damage in a war that began before she was born. As the stylist's footsteps faded down the hallway, Vincent returned to the window overlooking Beverly Hills. Somewhere out there, his daughter was probably researching flights to Hong Kong, her investigative instincts triggered by his clumsy attempts at protection. She would find the truth eventually. Sarah always did. The question was whether he would be the one to tell her, or whether she'd learn it from tomorrow's headlines after his public confession destroyed them both. Vincent Chen had built an empire on silence, but silence, he was learning, was just another word for borrowed time, and his loan had finally come due. Vincent stood motionless at the window, watching the last rays of sunset paint Beverly Hills in shades of amber and gold. In 6 hours, limousines would begin their procession toward the Chinese theater, carrying Hollywood's elite to celebrate his lifetime achievements. But all he could think about was a temple rooftop half a world away, where everything had begun with a choice that damned them both. His phone buzzed against the silence. Another text from the same unknown number, this one containing a single attachment that made his blood turn to ice. A video file. 30 seconds long. Vincent's finger hovered over the play button, some primal instinct warning him that what he was about to see would change everything. But Mei Lin had already proven she held all the cards. Delaying the inevitable was just another form of cowardice, and he'd been a coward long enough. The video began with shaky handheld footage, the kind shot on an old phone from a concealed position. It showed the interior of Master Lu's Temple Academy, empty except for 2 figures moving through the pre-dawn darkness. Vincent recognized the space immediately, the training hall where he'd spent countless hours perfecting forms that would later make him famous in Hollywood. But this footage was recent. Very recent. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago. The camera focused on 2 people, an elderly Chinese woman Vincent didn't recognize, and a younger man whose profile made his heart stutter. Tommy, Not Tommy as Vincent remembered him, 17 and fierce and burning with ambition, but Tommy as he would have been now, 50 years older, his black hair streaked with silver, his face lined with decades of living that had been stolen from him that night on the temple roof. Except that was impossible. Tommy was dead. Vincent had held his broken body, felt the last breath escape his lungs, watched the light fade from his eyes as Hong Kong police sirens wailed in the distance below. The video continued, and Vincent watched in growing horror as the older Tommy moved through a complex fighting sequence with fluid precision. Every technique was exactly as Vincent remembered. The signature spinning kick that Tommy had been perfecting, the defensive stance that had made him nearly impossible to counter, the fierce concentration that had marked him as Master Lu's most promising student. The camera captured Tommy's face in profile, and there was no mistaking the features that haunted Vincent's nightmares. The same sharp cheekbones, the same intense eyes, the same determined set to his jaw when he was pushing himself beyond normal human limits. The video ended with Tommy looking directly into the camera and speaking a single sentence in Cantonese, "Tell my brother I'm ready to finish what we started." Vincent dropped the phone as if it had burst into flames. The device clattered across the hardwood floor, the screen going dark, but the image was burned into his retinas. Tommy, alive. 50 years older and very much breathing, which meant everything. The guilt, the nightmares, the crushing weight of responsibility that had shaped every decision for half a century was built on a lie. His legs gave out, and he collapsed into the leather chair by the window, his mind reeling through the implications like a computer virus corrupting every file it touched. If Tommy was alive, then what had happened that night on the temple roof? Who had he held in his arms as life slipped away? Whose death had he been carrying like a stone in his chest for 50 years? The phone rang from where it lay on the floor, Mei Lin's number flashing insistently. Vincent crawled toward it on hands and knees, his world tilting sideways as fundamental truths rearranged themselves into impossible new patterns. "Hello, Vincent." Mei Lin's voice carried a satisfaction that cut through him like a blade. "I see you received Tommy's message. That's impossible." The words came out as a croak. "I watched him die. I held him." "You held Chen Wei-ming," she interrupted, and the name hit Vincent like a physical blow. Chen Wei-ming, the junior student who'd always lingered at the edge of their training sessions, desperate to belong but never quite skilled enough to earn Master Lu's attention. The boy who'd worshipped Tommy with the devotion of someone who understood he'd never be half as good. "Wei-ming followed you up to the roof that night," Mei Lin continued, her voice clinical in its precision. "He wanted to help Tommy with whatever challenge Master Lu had set, but when the scaffolding collapsed, when someone fell to their death, you were so consumed with guilt that you never looked closely at the body. You just assumed." Vincent's vision blurred as 50 years of carefully constructed reality crumbled around him. Wei-ming, the eager student who died trying to help his friend, while Tommy— "Where is he?" Vincent whispered. "Where has he been all these years?" "Prison," Mei Lin said simply. "He let you believe he was dead because he thought you'd pushed Wei-ming. He spent 5 decades thinking his best friend was a murderer." The line went dead, leaving Vincent alone with the wreckage of everything he thought he knew. Tomorrow, he would face the brother he'd mourned for 50 years and learn which one of them had actually killed their friend. Vincent remained on the floor long after the phone went silent, staring at the ceiling as the weight of 50 years collapsed onto his chest. Wei-ming. The name echoed through his mind like a prayer for the dead, finally given to the right ghost. He remembered now, fragments that guilt had buried so deep he'd convinced himself they were nightmares. The way the body had felt wrong in his arms, smaller than Tommy's should have been. The face turned away, mercifully hidden by shadows and blood, his own desperate assumption that his rival, his brother, his best friend had paid the price for their competition. But Tommy had lived. Tommy had watched Vincent flee Hong Kong in shame, carrying the wrong man's death like a millstone around his neck. And for 50 years, each had believed the other was a murderer. The irony was so perfect it felt scripted, the kind of tragic misunderstanding that would have made Master Lu shake his head and speak about the dangers of assumptions. 2 brothers, each carrying guilt for the same crime, each protecting the other from a truth that would have freed them both. Vincent hauled himself back into the chair, his body moving like that of a much older man. Through the window, Beverly Hills sparkled with the casual wealth of people whose worst secrets involved tax shelters and botched surgeries. None of them had spent 5 decades mourning someone who was locked away in a Hong Kong prison, counting down the years until revenge became possible. His phone buzzed with another message, this one from Sarah, Dad. I booked a flight to Hong Kong, red-eye tomorrow night. Whatever's happening, we face it together. The words hit him like a physical blow. Sarah had made her choice, the same choice Vincent had made 50 years ago when he thought protecting someone meant shouldering the blame alone. But she didn't understand what she was walking into. Mei Lin had orchestrated this reunion with the precision of a master choreographer, and every move Vincent made only drew Sarah deeper into the crossfire. He typed back quickly, Sarah, please don't. You don't understand what this is about. Her response came within seconds. Then tell me. I'm tired of living with your ghosts. Vincent stared at the words, recognizing his own stubbornness reflected in his daughter's digital voice. She was right, of course. He'd built their entire relationship on the foundation of his secrets, teaching her martial arts while hiding the blood on his hands, sharing his professional knowledge while keeping the source of his guilt locked away. But telling her the truth meant admitting that everything, his flight from Hong Kong, his desperate drive to succeed in Hollywood, his obsessive need to create the perfect action sequences, had been powered by mourning the wrong person. How did a father explain that his entire life was built on a mistake so fundamental it called into question every decision he'd ever made? The house phone rang, its old-fashioned tone cutting through his spiral of thoughts. Vincent almost ignored it. Who called landlines anymore except telemarketers and people delivering news you didn't want to hear? But something made him answer on the 4th ring. Vincent Chen? The voice was unfamiliar, elderly, speaking accented English with careful precision. Yes, my name is Chen Wei-ming's father. The words fell into the silence like stones down a well. I am calling from Hong Kong. Vincent's mouth went dry. Wei-ming's father. The man whose son had died because 2 teenagers were too proud to back down from a challenge that should never have been issued. Mr. Chen, Vincent whispered, the formal address feeling inadequate for the magnitude of what needed to be said. I don't know how to. My son worshipped you and Tommy Zhao, the old man continued, his voice carrying the weight of 50 years of grief. He followed you to that temple because he wanted to be like you, strong, fearless, important, a pause. He died because he was 17 and stupid and believed that courage meant ignoring danger. I'm sorry, Vincent said, the words pathetic and small. I'm so sorry. If I could change what happened. You cannot change the past, Mr. Chen interrupted. But perhaps you can change what happens next. My son's death has become a weapon in someone else's war. Tommy Zhao has spent 50 years in prison believing you killed Wei Ming. You have spent 50 years believing you killed Tommy. Meanwhile, the person who actually caused my son's death walks free. Vincent's blood chilled. What do you mean? The scaffolding did not collapse by accident, Mr. Chen. Someone weakened it. Someone who knew exactly which route you boys would take to reach the temple roof. Someone who wanted one of Master Lu's star pupils eliminated but didn't care which one. The phone slipped in Vincent's sweating grip. Who? Come to Hong Kong, Mr. Chen said quietly. Face your brother, learn the truth, and help me find justice for my son before I join him. The line went dead, leaving Vincent alone with the understanding that his 50-year nightmare was only beginning. The phone dead in his hand, as the final pieces of the puzzle rearranged themselves into a picture so horrifying he could barely comprehend it. Murder, premeditated, calculated murder disguised as a tragic accident. And for 50 years, he and Tommy had been carrying the guilt for someone else's crime. His mind raced back to that night, forcing himself to remember details he'd buried under decades of guilt and shame. The scaffolding had been sturdy when they'd tested it earlier that day. Master Lu always insisted his students check their equipment twice, but by the time they'd reached the temple roof for their midnight challenge, the supports had weakened just enough to collapse under the weight of 3 teenage boys instead of 2. Someone had known they would be there. Someone had known exactly how to engineer a fall that would eliminate one of Master Lu's prize students, while making it look like youthful recklessness. The house phone rang again, shrill in the silence. Vincent answered without checking the caller ID, his voice hollow. "Vincent?" The accent was different this time, American but with traces of something else underneath. "This is Tommy." 50 years collapsed into nothing. Vincent's brother's voice, older now, weathered by decades of imprisonment and loss, but unmistakably the same. The boy who had shared his dreams, his training, his desperate hunger to prove themselves worthy of Master Lu's teaching. Tommy. The name came out as a whisper. God, Tommy, I thought. That I was dead. Tommy's laugh was bitter, empty of the joy Vincent remembered. "I know. Just like I thought you were a murderer. I should have looked. We both should have done many things differently." Tommy's voice carried the weight of 50 years of regret. "But we were children, Vincent. Frightened children who made the wrong assumptions and spent our lives paying for them." Vincent closed his eyes, seeing his brother's face as it had been at 17. Fierce, determined, burning with the same ambition that had driven them both to that rooftop. "Where have you been?" "Stanley Prison. 50 years for a murder I didn't commit. They finally released me last month when new evidence surfaced, a pause that stretched like a held breath. Evidence that proves what Wei Ming's father suspected all along." "Tell me." Master Lu's assistant, Li Mei Lin. She'd been skimming money from the academy for months, selling information about our training methods to rival schools. Master Lu was getting suspicious, planning to audit the books. But if one of his star pupils died in a training accident, especially if it happened during some reckless midnight adventure, the scandal would destroy his reputation. No one would ask questions about missing money when they were too busy questioning his teaching methods. Vincent's blood turned to ice. Mei Lin, the woman who had orchestrated this entire reunion, who had threatened Sarah, who had spent months manipulating him toward this moment of revelation. She hadn't been seeking justice for Wei Ming's death. She'd been covering up her own crime. "She's been planning this for years," Vincent said, understanding flooding through him like cold water. The letter, the threats, bringing us both back to Hong Kong. "She knows we've figured it out," Tommy interrupted. "She's desperate now. Desperate people make mistakes, but they also do terrible things to protect themselves." "Is your daughter safe?" The question hit Vincent like a physical blow. Sarah, who was probably boarding a plane to Hong Kong at this very moment, walking straight into a trap 50 years in the making. His hands shook as he grabbed his cell phone, dialing her number with desperate fingers. It went straight to voicemail. "She's not answering," Vincent said, panic rising in his throat. "She took a red-eye to Hong Kong. She's flying right into—" "I know." Tommy's voice carried a grim certainty that made Vincent's worst fears real. "Mei Lin's been tracking her movements for weeks. She's not just trying to destroy us, Vincent. She's trying to complete what she started that night. Eliminate Master Lu's legacy entirely. We have to stop her." "Yes," Tommy agreed, and for the first time in 50 years, Vincent heard something familiar in his brother's voice, the fierce determination that had made them both champions. "We have to finish what we started, together." Vincent stood up, his body moving with the fluid grace of a man remembering his purpose. 50 years of guilt fell away, replaced by something harder and more focused. Sarah was in danger. His daughter, his legacy, everything that mattered in the world, was walking into the hands of a woman who had already killed once to protect her secrets. But this time, Vincent Chen wouldn't be running away in shame. This time, he had his brother beside him. "I'm coming to Hong Kong," Vincent said, his voice steady for the first time in days. "I know," Tommy replied. "I'll be waiting." The reunion happened in the shadow of the old temple, 50 years after it had all begun. Vincent found Tommy sitting on the steps where Master Lu used to address his students, his silver-streaked hair catching the morning light. Time had carved lines around his eyes and added weight to his shoulders, but when he stood, the movement carried the same fluid grace that had made them brothers in everything but blood. They didn't embrace. 50 years of separation, of guilt and misunderstanding, couldn't be bridged with a simple gesture. Instead, they stood facing each other like mirrors, reflecting different paths through the same tragedy, each seeing what the other might have become. "She's safe," were Tommy's first words. "Sarah. We got to the airport before she could board. The relief nearly buckled Vincent's knees. Mei Lin? In custody. The evidence Wei Ming's father gathered was comprehensive. Tommy's smile was sad, tired. Turns out guilt makes people confess to crimes they didn't commit, but it also makes them very careful about documenting the truth. Every letter you saved, every sleepless night you recorded in those journals, it all helped piece together what really happened. Vincent looked past his brother to the temple grounds, where they'd spent their youth chasing perfection. The training posts were weathered now, the practice mats faded by decades of sun and rain, but the space still held the echo of Master Lu's voice, still carried the weight of lessons learned too late. Wei Ming's father? Vincent asked. Peaceful. He said knowing the truth was enough. Tommy's voice carried the weight of 50 years of conversations they'd never had. His son died because of greed, not because of us. That knowledge, it changed something, for all of us. They walked together through the courtyard where they'd first met as children, past the meditation garden where Master Lu had taught them that true strength came from understanding, not from force. Vincent could feel the ghosts of their younger selves running alongside them, fierce and fearless and innocent of how much grief the world could hold. I became a teacher, Tommy said quietly, in prison. Taught martial arts to kids who thought violence was the only way to survive. Funny how losing everything teaches you what actually matters. Vincent nodded, remembering his own journey through Hollywood's glittering maze, how every successful stunt had felt hollow without his brother there to share it. I named my production company after you, Brothers Films. Sarah never knew why. She does now. They climbed the path to the spot where the temple roof had once stood, now just foundations and empty sky. Someone had built a small memorial there, 3 stones arranged in a triangle, with Wei Ming's name carved in the center. Fresh flowers lay beside it, offerings from a father who had finally found peace. I used to dream about this moment, Vincent said, standing where his life had fractured 50 years before. What I would say to you, how I would explain... Nothing to explain. Tommy's voice was gentle, carrying the wisdom that comes from accepting what cannot be changed. We were children. We made the choices that seemed right with the knowledge we had. The rest was never ours to carry. Vincent felt something shift in his chest, a weight he'd carried so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. Forgiveness, not just from Tommy but from himself, from the 17-year-old boy who had run from Hong Kong believing he was a killer, who had spent 50 years trying to atone for a crime that existed only in his guilty imagination. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the mist that clung to the mountainside. Below them, Hong Kong stretched toward the harbor, a city transformed beyond recognition but somehow still the same. Still the place where 2 boys had learned that friendship could survive anything, even 50 years of believing it was dead. What happens now? Vincent asked. Tommy smiled, and for a moment, Vincent saw the boy he remembered, eager, determined, full of dreams too big for any single life to hold. Now we go home, both of us. You have a daughter to protect, and I have students waiting for me to return. Different paths, but brothers, Vincent finished. Always. They descended the mountain together as the city woke below them, 2 old men carrying the lightness of finally understanding that some stories don't end with tragedy. They transform it into something else, something harder to name but easier to live with. Vincent's plane lifted off that evening, with Hong Kong falling away beneath him like a weight finally released. In his pocket, he carried a photo Tommy had given him, the 3 of them at 17, Vincent and Tommy flanking Wei Ming, all grinning at the camera with the unconscious confidence of boys who believed they would live forever. Some of them had, just not in the way they'd expected. When Sarah met him at LAX, she hugged him differently, like she was embracing a father she was finally allowed to know completely. They drove home through the familiar maze of Los Angeles traffic, carrying between them the comfortable silence of people who no longer needed to hide from the truth. "So what's next?" Sarah asked as they pulled into their driveway. Vincent looked at his house, the place he'd built with guilt and maintained with secrets, and felt something new take root in his chest. Not peace exactly, but possibility. "We make better movies," he said simply,